So, you're a Cleveland Browns fan. Just how big of a fan are you? Do you deserve a seat at the Dawgs Table? Well, you're here, aren't you?
The best fans, the most patient fans in the league.
This is the Dawgs Table.
Touchdown, Shabalaba Hub!
If you're obnoxious, opinionated, over the top, and you live for the Browns...
45-40, run, William, run! 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
Welcome to your new family, the Dawgs Table, an official Dawgs By Nature podcast on the SB Nation and Vox Media Podcast Network. Let's do this. Welcome to the Dawgs Table. Now your hosts, Craig Fountain and Ryan Angelo.
Let's go! Let's go!
What's up, everybody? This is Craig Fountain and Ryan Angelo with the Dawgs Table, a Dawgs By Nature podcast on the SB Nation and Vox Media Podcast Network. How's it going tonight, Ryan?
It's going okay, buddy. How are you?
Not too bad. Did you have a good Christmas?
I did. The kids enjoyed it. That's all that matters. How was yours?
Same. As
Good.
long as the kids enjoyed it,
Yep.
I'm good to go. Christmas Eve, not so kind to Browns fans.
Yep.
But here we are. Here we are. It is not a Victory Tuesday.
It is not.
And the discussion tonight will be very different than if it was a Victory Tuesday. We needed a victory to stay alive. We are not alive.
Nope. We did.
It's over. It's over. It's done. It's done.
The Band-Aid has been pulled off.
Yeah. And, you know, we titled the episode More Questions Than Answers because we have so many questions headed into the offseason. Big questions, actually. Bigger than I think we anticipated. Even, like, if we would have had this conversation 6 months ago, and, you know, it was right before the season started. Maybe we were in training camp and we were like, okay, well, what if this season doesn't go very well? What kind of questions would we have going into the off season? I don't think they would be the same as what we may actually have today. And there's a couple things we're going to get into. We're still going to look ahead to the Commanders game, but we're also going to discuss the situation between the Cleveland Browns and Kevin Stefanski. I think we're going to discuss if there's something a little fishy about Myles Garrett's discipline that he received, not getting the start and not playing the first series.
A lot of
past
reckless speculation tonight. I like it.
Yes. Speculation aplenty. It will be reckless. So that's what we have to look forward to. But the Browns take the L. They get the loss. They are officially eliminated from playoff contention. And we knew we had to win this one or we were out. We lost. The weather was exactly what we anticipated, right? It was cold. It was windy. Not sure why there was snow on the field. It hadn't snowed in like a day and a half
Right.
leading up to the game. It was run heavy, right? And Deshaun Watson played okay. There, you know, he was on target. But we had dropped passes between a number of pass catchers.
Yes.
And the run game wasn't enough to get us over the top.
No.
You know, it's really interesting. And think about this. I wasn't even anticipating talking about this episode, but we got beat by a dome team.
Yep.
In a weather football game that's supposed to give us home field advantage because we don't have a dome, which is the argument for not having a dome.
Yeah.
Is that weird? That's weird.
I don't know if I would call it weird. I think it's just par for the course, honestly.
So maybe it's not football weather to be 0 degrees with 30, 40, 50 degree wind chills and be on the lake and not have a dome. Maybe that's not football weather.
Yeah. I don't think it benefits anybody, to be honest.
All right. So we have our commenters are alive and well, but you know, we lost to the Saints. And Andy Dalton owns us once again, right? Andy Dalton's just completely throughout his career, doesn't matter where he's at, he just owns the Browns.
Yep.
And it's a little disappointing because it seals the fate of our season. There's no chance of the postseason at this point. And we're moving along into a stage where, like we said before, there's more questions than answers. And, one of the big questions is Kevin Stefanski or the rest of the coaching staff. Where do we stand with them? Because even if we excuse me, even if we chalk this up as a lost season because of how certain things panned out, we're not heading into the offseason with a lot of confidence, I don't think.
Agreed.
Myles Garrett was out on the first drive. He did not get the start. It came out that it was for disciplinary reasons, and later that was clarified by a report that he was a no-call, no-show with a cold.
They really laid the hammer down, let me tell you.
What do you think about that? Are you buying that?
It doesn't make me feel very good, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure on that. I feel like this may have been, again, reckless speculation. I feel like this may have been an issue between him and a coaching staff member. That's, Myles is not shy about saying things how they are. And it wouldn't surprise me if he said something that, got him in some hot water at the coaching staff.
Here's what really kind of, to me, seems weird about this. You have a generational talent making phenomenal money. He's one of the highest earners in the game.
Right.
He's been here a while. He's put some time in here. He wants to win. We know that. We've gotten him through turbulence. He hasn't had the best PR since he's come into the league. You're a generational talent that makes generational talent money, and you're going to no-call, no-show because of a cold? That doesn't sit right with me. It seems like an excuse or a cop-out or a scapegoat or whatever you want to call it. It seems like it doesn't seem right. Like, do you really think Myles Garrett would just say, I got the sniffles, I got the sore throat, I got a headache? They'll know I'm sick if I just stay home and don't say anything. I'm only making $100 million
right
over the course of my contract. I don't think that they'll think much about it if their best defensive player, highest paid defensive player, just doesn't show up for a couple days. I'm not buying any of this. There's something fishy about this situation to me.
Yeah, I don't buy it either. We'll go with that.
So, and you know what? This isn't anything against Myles Garrett. Now, let's say that this is exactly how the situation played out. And he had a cold and he no-called, no-showed. Everybody wanted to pile on Kevin Stefanski and his coaching staff and this front office for not holding these players accountable, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And let's say that he did no-call, no-show because of a cold. The criticism Kevin Stefanski is receiving for this punishment for holding these players accountable is not fair. Now, that's assuming that this is exactly what happened. I'm not buying it. I don't expect them to say, if there's another situation going on, I don't expect them to say, this is what's happening. They're not going to air the dirty laundry. But it feels like there was something like almost like boiling to a point here, right? Where they asked Myles Garrett, the media asked Myles Garrett about, Joe Woods and stuff like that. And he threw his support behind Joe Woods. If you watch the interview, I don't know that you really bought it.
What else are they going to say?
What else are they going to say? Right. Like, this is not against Myles Garrett. But at the same time, like, I didn't buy it. Brian, I don't know if you bought it, but like, I don't know that anybody really buys it, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
But what do you expect them to say? That's fine. But for them to not start him and sit him a series for a no-call, no-show for 2 days for a cold, come on. Now I feel like my intelligence is being insulted.
Right.
This is wild to me.
Right.
Maybe it's nothing. Maybe that's exactly what happened. I just don't see Myles Garrett going, why do I need to tell anybody why I'm not showing up?
No, we're both on the same page. I don't think that's what it was either.
Jeez. Wild. But there's trouble in paradise, if that's what you want to call it, I think. There's you move on to some of the, we're recklessly speculating already, right? And that's what you had just said when we started the show, was lots of reckless speculation. A lot of folks are speculating on what's going to happen with the coaching staff in the offseason.
Yep.
And not everybody wanted to talk about the offseason over the past few weeks because there was still a chance, right? There's no chance now. We can't ignore it. We're into the offseason at this point, even though we have a few games to play.
Correct.
And I had tweeted out a couple weeks ago, and I'll read it verbatim. This was on December 11th. Convos I've had, this is what I said, and I quote, "Convos I've had over the past few weeks and the way this team played today leads me to think there's a higher chance than most would expect that Stefanski isn't back next season. Not sure if I agree with it, but he's not the most influential, quote-unquote, calculator boy in Berea." Now, calculator boy is not my choice of words. That was kind of tongue-in-cheek. There's a lot of people that refer to Stefanski and DePodesta and analytics folks in football as calculator boys. That was kind of a tongue-in-cheek take when it comes to them. And, I was kind of, a lot of people told me I was crazy. Like, why are you suggesting this? Stefanski's safe. He's going to get a full year with Watson. Did you read Tony Grossi's article that came out?
Bits and pieces of it.
So I'm gonna read two little sections that were floating around on Twitter, just so we can kind of have this conversation. And then Ryan, I want you to give me your opinion.
Okay.
And then I'll give my opinion, and we'll kind of go from there. The first section says, a person who formerly worked in, this is Tony Grossi, by the way. I think I mentioned that, but just to be clear, Tony Grossi, these are his words. A person who formerly worked in Browns football operations recently gave the Land on Demand insight into the influence of DePodesta and how a coach may elect to buy in as a means of keeping his job. All right. Haslam believes, this is in quotes, Haslam believes in the analytics so much, the source said, I think head coaches try to please him throwing the ball. We sat in countless meetings about how important it was to throw the ball. A 4-yard run was of no value on the analytics chart. And it was about 13-yard passes and more. Only runs of 7 yards were of value. DePodesta came up with some magical score. Now, that's the first section of what I'm going to read. And, this is where, from what I tweeted out, I don't think that this Stefanski has the influence of the ownership or the front office that DePodesta has. They will live and die by DePodesta. And I think that DePodesta has the control. To the point where Tony Grossi has a source that's saying, listen, this isn't Kevin Stefanski's offense. In order to keep his job, he's going to bend and follow the rules laid out, the path laid out by DePodesta. Because as long as what he's doing is what DePodesta says he should be doing, that gives him job security. All right. So this just came out. So far, I think everybody's on the same page. Now, the next part of the article And this is from the Land on Demand. I want to give them credit. I don't know if you're watching live who these screenshots came from. They've been floating all over the place around Twitter. There's a bunch of them. Even so, it's behind a paywall. So I don't know that whoever posted them would want credit. But here's what the next one says. Paul DePodesta has pretty much convinced owner Jimmy Haslam that the only way to build a Super Bowl team is by consistently throwing for quote-unquote explosive plays in the passing game. Apparently, no matter the weather conditions. Stefanski and offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt will insist that their system is rooted in the running game. But that is true only to the extent that the Browns desire an effective running game, essentially to set up a play-action passing game. Eventually, they want those play-action passes to be more frequently laden with deep shots downfield, and that is where Deshaun Watson comes in. The bottom line is Stefanski's job is safe because he is completely adhering to DePodesta's advanced statistics or analytics models and not resisting them. Disagreeing with or rejecting DePodesta's research would be Stefanski's quickest ticket out of town. Now, as I'm struggling to speak because I have a tickle in my throat, my apologies. This is what I was kind of alluding to in that tweet that I had mentioned before that I'd sent out a couple weeks ago. And that is DePodesta has the control and the power. But I believe that when these things come out and sources come out and reports come out, we are dealing with half-truths, right? You never really get the full truth. I believe that that part of the story is true. What I don't believe, and then Brian, I'll leave this open to you, and then I'll give my full thoughts on this. What I don't believe is that Stefanski's okay with it. I don't believe that he is just going to say, my job's safe as long as I do whatever that guy says, the Moneyball baseball guy, DePodesta. I'm just going to do what he says and my job's safe and that's it. I don't, I'm going to keep talking if I don't let you give your take. I want to hear your take before I give mine.
So I believe it. I believe the portion that, he's got to kind of go with the flow, but I do believe that I'm kind of opposite of you on this because I feel that this structure of how the ownership group and DePodesta like to meddle in game plans and, talent acquisition and all that stuff has been a known problem for this team for years, right? We know that they put their fingers in it too much. It's been alluded to many times. So that leads me to believe that I think it's very, very realistic to think that when Stefanski or any coach is hired by this ownership group with DePodesta, essentially is the main man, I think that these coaches are notified ahead of time. Listen, this is what we're going to do. I'll take your input, but you're going to run this team in a manner of which we like, or that's very heavy in the direction that we're trying to go to. So I feel like it's always been this way. So it's hard for me not to believe it. And it's hard for me to think anything else just because we've been dealing with this for too many years. It would not shock me if when he was hired, they said, listen, we're going to be very, we're going to have our hands very deep into your playbook and very deep into your game planning. And this is going to be a collective effort run by us kind of thing.
But you don't think that there's any differences in the way Stefanski is running his offense now or even last year as opposed to the first year he was in town?
I mean, there's similarities there. It's a little different. But no, I mean, I just don't feel like a lot of it has changed too much. I mean, they've passed a little more, which maybe they let him kind of do his thing for a little bit and then decided to take over. I don't know. It's so hard to say. that the team, the way that they run things there is so much different than most NFL franchises. So it's really difficult for me to say one way or another. It's just nothing would shock me.
For me, I feel like this. I got to figure out how I want to put this on the record. For me, I feel like Podesta has laid out this path for the way Stefanski's going to run his offense, and Stefanski can essentially get on board or get off the train. And I think that while Stefanski is following what's been put in front of him, or following the path. Sorry, guys, my voice is cracking, and I have a little bit of a cough here. Hopefully, I don't have COVID, but I think that Stefanski's following the path that Podesta has laid out. With that being said, I don't think Stefanski's on board. I think it's about job security and obedience.
Well, sure,
but that's not good.
Oh, I know. I agree.
That's not good at all.
No, it's not.
I don't think I'm willing to bet there is a power struggle between the coaching staff and the analytics guys.
Yeah.
Mainly, I bet you there is a rift between Stefanski and Podesta. I'm willing to bet
logical.
I'm willing to bet that Stefanski and Podesta do not get along. And if it hasn't already boiled over yet, it will. But here's what I've been preaching, and here's what I think still to this day will happen is Podesta will win. Because what did I say in that tweet? I might have said calculator boy tongue-in-cheek in quotes when I tweeted that out. But Stefanski is not the most influential calculator boy in Berea. That's Podesta.
Yep. He runs it. He runs the show.
So am I on the fire Stefanski train? Not in particular. Not necessarily. I don't think Stefanski's running his own offense. I also think that Podesta has too much influence over the offense. But I do think Stefanski is on thin ice, or his fate has already been decided, because their interests do not align.
I agree with that.
I have a commenter. We appreciate you joining the show. We don't always mention the comments when we're live because this is an audio only portion of the show. But somebody said, got to remember, Watson wants to see Kevin's offense. I'm also not buying the fact that Watson came here for Stefanski's offense.
Yeah. Let me, can I take this one?
Yes, please.
Let's be honest here. That is player speak in the media. You know, we say things like coaches speak. What else is he going to say? He's already under the microscope. He's on a new team. He's with a new franchise. He's with a new fan base. He has to essentially stay in line and not rock the boat any more than it's already been rocked. So he's not going to come out and say, my head coach sucks. Like, I don't know what else you guys want me to do. You know, he's not going to say that. No player's going to say that.
Just like Myles Garrett didn't say that about Joe Woods.
And
he
I can
threw
guarantee
support
you
behind
that
Joe
he probably
Woods, but
thinks Joe Woods is an idiot. So, I mean, like, they're not going to come out and say those things just because they're going to either get punished by the team, they're going to lose money, or something's going to happen. So Watson 100% is on the Cleveland Browns because he got the fully guaranteed contract. That's it. That's what it comes down to.
What blows my mind is people think that it's not okay to think that.
Right.
Of course, that's okay. Would you do something different?
No. If I had
go where the money is.
No, I mean, it could have been argued of the teams that he had available to him to go to. This was one of the, quote unquote, on paper, more talented teams. And not on top of that, that team offered him a fully guaranteed $200 and however many $1 million contract. So it's logical. Like, yeah, I'm going to go to that team because that's my best financial situation. And it could be argued it's my best football situation. But what we don't account for is Podesta and the meddling and the coach really not running the show and all that stuff. So I don't care what Watson has said. I don't care if he says he came to Cleveland for cheesesteaks from a certain restaurant. It's not true. He's here because of the money, and he's probably here a little bit in part because he could play with someone like Nick Chubb and Myles Garrett, and there was some talent on this team. But sorry,
Evan,
it's not because of Stefanski.
Evan's the commenter here. If you're listening on the Dawgs By Nature podcast network, Evan commented, "We're not picking on you, Evan.
No, Evan, not at all.
Not at all.
I'll take it that way.
But listen, and I kept hearing, but so and so would have matched the offer. We don't know that.
Correct.
There were reports of that. They're not substantiated. Nothing set in stone. It didn't happen. You can't live and die by the idea that the Panthers would have matched it or the Falcons would have matched it, and it doesn't matter. And to me, I don't understand why it's such a bad thing to say Watson came to Cleveland for the money. I would have done the same thing. I'm going where the money's going.
Yeah. I don't care what they offered him. We got him. That's all that matters to me.
None of us make millions of dollars that are on the screen right now. And you know what?
Right.
If somebody was going to offer me more money to do the same job, maybe that's not the way to go about this conversation. But let's welcome to the conversation Barry Schroeder. If this is the first time for you guys that are listening on the Dawgs By Nature podcast network, Barry Schroeder has been around the show since the beginning. And we love Barry, and we're excited to have him on. How you doing, Barry?
I'm good. Usually Tuesday nights I'm sitting in soccer practice anymore. So we're on Christmas break, so I was able to tune in tonight, which it's been a minute. So
good to have you back, buddy. Good to have you back.
Yeah. Probably will get in next week too. But other than that, cool. I mean, it's just tough to make the show anymore.
Yeah, and that's okay. And we have commenters bringing up a couple different things, and
but the nice part about that,
I'm
sorry to interrupt you, Craig, is that now I can listen to it on the Dawgs By Nature website.
There you go.
You can. Or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. That's great.
Shameless plug.
In the comments, we have a couple different things going on. Somebody said Watson's from Georgia and played college in Clemson. No way he played on the cold of the past weekend. That was a historically cold game. He probably didn't plan on that, but he is going to have to get used to playing in the cold. With that being said,
bad.
I'm impressed with how he handled it.
Yeah, I didn't think he looked
I agree.
I mean, it could be argued that we had 3 touchdowns that were dropped by receivers, that we could have easily won that game.
Yeah. Just like Jacoby Brissett in the beginning of the season, Watson played well enough to win that football game.
Absolutely.
We have bigger issues than quarterback.
Yes, we do.
And I would like to remind everybody that there's a lot of folks that feel Watson's a top 3 quarterback. There's some folks that feel he's a top 5. There's people that feel he's a top 10 or a 15. Having a top 3 quarterback doesn't guarantee you anything. There are phenomenal quarterbacks that have barely sniffed a Super Bowl, let alone winning one. I'm not doubting Watson's talent at all, but the way this roster is built right now, and if things don't change, it's not a slam dunk.
No,
the postseason is not a slam dunk. The Super Bowl is not a slam dunk over the next few years.
No.
This
team has many issues and holes right now.
So Watson looked pretty good, I thought. Our receivers did not look good.
Nope.
It was a rough day for folks like me that are in the Run Nick Chubb 20 plus times and will win club. Because we did and we didn't win.
Right.
But yeah, it was a rough game and the season's over. We are moving on to the Commanders this week.
The only thing we have to do from here on out is beat Pittsburgh.
That's
it. That's what we have to look forward to. And you know what? We beat Baltimore once. We beat Pittsburgh twice. We beat Cincinnati once this year. Yeah, you beat Pittsburgh and you end up going 4-2 in your division. You should have won it.
Moral victories, fellas.
You should have won it. You should have won it. If you go 4-2 in your division, you should have won it.
So, Ryan, how do you think this is going to play out? Do you think Stefanski is going to stay here?
So, I mean, Man, it's hard. I've always been on the assumption that he was going to get a full season with Watson before they made any decisions on his future with the team. But it does make me concerned that he is unable to do things the way that he would like. And I think that just in any situation is going to build resentment between two parties when that happens. And, I would say he's probably closer to being let go than I would have originally thought he would be at this point in the season. But I still kind of lean towards, I think they want to pair him with Watson for a little bit longer. I guess it really kind of depends on the rest of the season and how bad they look, or if they pack it up, and give up on the season, or.
So before you continue,
yeah,
let me ask you part B to this question. I think I already know the answer because I let you get far enough ahead before I ask this part of the question. But has his fate already been decided in your mind, or do these last few weeks matter?
I think the last few weeks matter. I think it's close to being decided. And I think that's why you're seeing leaks of this nature come out, because that's how things work in the NFL. Is information starts to kind of trickle and then things happen. And, both sides of the table start to kind of let things come out in the media, and, then they both deny it. And then it kind of leads to, a certain event happening. That's just kind of how the NFL works. So, it's tough, man. I mean, he could be great these last two games and they could decide to keep him, or they could be terrible, or his fate's already decided. But I would say it's probably closer to decided than not. And I think these last two games really do matter. And depending on how competitive they look is going to make a difference, because I just don't think he's the right guy for the job in the long run. I think,
why?
I just think that the demeanor that he has is not what's the way I want to explain this, is not, I don't want to say he needs to be more harsh or harder of a personality, but I just don't feel like he's got the mean streak in him to be.
I think it's
who
there.
We need.
I don't think he shows us, but I think it's there. And I don't know that it matters a whole lot, because you seem to have coaches that are on, extreme sides of the spectrum, one way or the other. Stefanski doesn't appear to show much emotion. And then you have guys like Greg Williams, who, we have Browns fans still going to bat for Greg Williams. Like, give me Greg Williams. Like, I don't care if he'll go cover zero.
Right.
like, what's up, buddy? But there's a child that popped into the screen there. If you're watching live. No, I love it. But I don't know that that's the answer either. I will say that if Eric Mangini had this roster, he'd still be here.
Right.
But here's the thing about Eric Mangini. He wasn't really that fiery on the sidelines, was he? I just don't. But at the same time,
I don't want it to come across that I'm saying that he's got to be mean.
This team couldn't physically run the laps that he would have them run.
I just don't feel like he has the control of the locker room in the way that he should. And I really don't have any evidence to say that. It's just the way I feel. I think it's just the way he comes off to me. It just doesn't feel like he's got that football man. Like, I'm going to, be the leader of this locker room. He comes off too soft to me. And that's just the way I see him. Like, I'm not saying that he might not be mean or he might not have that mean streak in him. I feel like he's not the right guy. Like, when you see a coach and you see how they are in the media, you see how they are with their players, you see how they are with their players after games, after wins. You just notice those guys that are there that are just all about everything football, all about the team, all about the wins and the losses, and they hang on everything. He's just always melancholy. Does that make sense? It's just always just we did what we needed to do. We need to be better. But it's I like the coaches that get fired up, and the coaches that live and die with losses and like are there to hug dudes out on the field after games and are like jumping in the screen when they're being interviewed and like loving on their players and just showing that leadership. And I just don't get that from him. And if that makes sense, like, I don't know. It's just how I feel.
Barry, give me your thoughts in 20 or 30 seconds here.
I kind of agree with Ryan. When it comes to Stefanski, he seems disconnected. I don't think he has control of the locker room. Yeah. He's so just matter of fact goes about his business, and I don't know that he gets that personal aspect with the players. And some coaches, they get that personal aspect, they get the best out of their players. I mean, look what was McDaniel down there in Miami got out of Tua this year after last year's. When players like their coach, they play for him, and I don't think you get that, and I don't think they respect him. I don't think Myles Garrett respects him because he wouldn't have just not showed up at a meeting. And if you don't respect your coach, then you're not going to get, you can go out and give 100% and you're going to be 500. To win in the NFL, you have to give that extra 10%. It's easy to get to that 98%. Anybody in this world can get to 98%. It takes a special person to get from that 98 the rest of the way.
Right.
And I don't think
he comes off like a CEO and not a football coach.
I agree. Yeah. Does
that make sense?
Yeah, but see, like, I feel like Stefanski and Greg Williams is the one everybody likes to go to. They're on opposite ends of the spectrum. But if you open up that spectrum to a guy like McDaniels, like Stefanski's right in the middle. McDaniels is couldn't be further away from a guy like Greg Williams. McDaniels is a player's coach who is going to say, I effed up. This is on me. But he's going to be jamming with the guys during warm-ups, trolling the opposite team. Like, he is by definition, players coach, but he also manages to hold them accountable. Whereas Greg Williams kind of comes off to me as like an Eric Mangini, where it's his way or the highway. He doesn't need you to like him. He doesn't want you to like him, but you better respect him and do what he asks you to do, right, or you're gone. I feel like I don't really have an opinion. There are so many different leadership styles.
Right.
They can all be effective if applied in the correct manner.
I just don't think football is the arena for different leadership styles. Like, I feel like you still have to have a specific quality to be a head coach in the NFL. And like, this is this comparison is probably closer to Greg Williams than it would be the current situation. But Dan Campbell, for example, in the Lions, he on the sideline lives and dies with every play.
Former Brown, by the way.
He celebrates the wins. He cries after the losses. Like, you just can tell the emotion on the sideline when the game is going on. He's living and dying with every play. And, I need that. I think this team needs that in a coach. Like, I don't think that they need a CEO. I don't think they need a yes man. I don't think they need someone who's just, coming up and just, doing that nice handshake and just walking off to this team needs somebody who's running all over the field and hugging the dudes that had awesome games and celebrating with the team and doing stuff like that. Like, they don't need a CEO. They need a leader. And that's just where it's at.
He's not a former Brown, by the way. I don't know why I said that. I was thinking of somebody else.
How many player coaches win Super Bowls?
How many what?
Player coaches win Super Bowls. The players coach.
Ooh,
how many won Super Bowls? Think about it. Andy Reid's not really a players coach.
Mm-mm.
I mean, we know Belichick's not a players coach.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. That's one where I'd have to go back and actually like really look at it. Belichick isn't a players coach, and he's the best to ever do it, right?
Right.
But there's so many just different philosophies, but this is where you hear those terms like buy-in. Do the players buy in? And whether it's on one end of the spectrum or the other or somewhere in the middle, doesn't matter where it is, the players have to buy in to exactly what is happening. And to go back to what we talked about earlier in the episode, if there's a disconnect between your front office or the guy your ownership hired to come up with a winning game plan and the guy calling the plays, how can you expect the players to buy into anything? It really just starts at the top. And you know what? That's not really Deep Podesta's fault. And that's not really Stefanski's fault. Who's that go on? Haslam. It's on Haslam.
Yeah, and that actually goes in line with the rumor that was floating out there not long ago where DePodesta was rumored to not even want to hire Stefanski, that he wanted to hire Robert Saleh. And it was the Haslams that ended up taking Stefanski as the coach. So, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of par for the course.
You know, the next month's going to tell everything. Well,
Yep.
Yeah, the next month's going to tell everything. You know, a month from now, we'll know where we're at, what we're doing, and you know, I deep down, I hope they stick with Kevin Stefanski another year. I'd hate to see a rebuild. You know, I'd hate to see him. You know, if they do get rid of Stefanski, they're going to have to hire a coach, and they're going to have to sell it to somebody like, hey, these are our players. Can you win with our players?
Right.
You know,
because how much of this is pressure on the organization and the ownership group now that they've spent $200+ million fully guaranteed on a franchise quarterback, and they've got guys like Chubb and Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward that are just getting older every year and they're not maximizing their youth. So how much of this is pressure on them to go, you know what, if this guy's not the guy, we've got to make the change now instead of waiting another full season, versus them originally at the beginning of this season going, okay, I want to give him a full season with Deshaun Watson and see how he does. Like, I feel like you're starting to see the leaks where maybe the pressure is mounting in the organization where they're feeling that pressure. Like, you know, we have to make this work because if we don't, it's going to be the biggest failure in the history of this organization, you know?
And
do you feel that? Like, I feel like that's coming. Like, it's starting to mount.
You know, I feel it, but I hope not. But the one thing that tells me that it's not, and I think Stefanski is going to be back for the other reason is who do you get to coach this team?
Right.
When you hire a coach wants to come in, they want to build their team, they want to put their stamp on it, they want to draft their players, they want to put their system in, and we don't have that to sell to a coach.
Right.
We don't have first round draft picks for the next 2 years.
Right.
Our salary cap's maxed out.
Right.
You know, they don't have there's no money to go to build a team with. You don't have the tools. There's a ready-made team, and they're going to have to find a coach ready to come in and coach it. And then say that coach does come in and win a Super Bowl, then it's going to be like, well, that wasn't his team. You know, it was the he won so-and-so's team.
Right.
You know, so you're still not going to get that. You know, I don't know that you're going to get that next up and coming coach. I mean, you might get somebody like, you know, I hate to say, like everybody keeps saying, Sean Payton. You know, maybe because it's ready to win. You know, but I don't know. It's hard to tell.
I don't know. That's a whole nother topic of conversation. Like, I think he would listen just because Deshaun's there. But I think he would require too much control, and I don't think that this team would give it. They're too much. They stray away from the football guy and they go for the yes man.
Yeah,
and I think that's that's where they're at.
But that's my point. You're not going to find anybody to coach a team to come in and take over a team that doesn't have a draft pick for the next two years.
No, and
that's capped out on salary cap.
Right.
You know, that's got all this money tied up. The
easy rebuttal is, but we have Deshaun Watson. But that to me only goes so far.
Right.
Yeah. But coaches want to come in and they want to win a Super Bowl with their team. They want to build a team and see what their team can do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like the movie Draft Day. You know, the coach at the end, he's like, when he drafted Vontae Mack, it's because he wanted to build his team. He says, I feel like if I draft this guy, then I'm just keeping the seat warm for whoever they bring in next.
Right.
Well, coaches want to build their own team, and then you can't build a team in Cleveland.
I would say the only devil's advocate part of that would be Sean Payton's an older coach. He's already tasted success. So I don't know if he would necessarily want to build a team. He would probably want to come into a situation that's got some talent in it already. But
that's what I said. Like,
he's also a great football mind, and he's also going to want a certain amount of control that he's just not going to get. And that's
it might also be hard to get a guy excited over a quarterback who had Drew Brees for how many years?
Yeah, but the thing is, like, he's not going to, he's going to want an elite quarterback, and we know that. I mean, I can see the difference between Deshaun Watson just in a couple games in his skill set and Jacoby Brissett. I can see it. And I was and Craig knows, I was a big Brissett fan. Like, I was a huge Brissett fan. I was behind him all the way. Like, he did a heck of a job for us. But Deshaun Watson just got that just got it. He's a little bit
he's
better.
got that it factor. He's got that. He's got that dude. He's that dude. That's what
he can he can make that throw that like most quarterbacks can't, and it is what it is. I guess, a month from now we'll find out. Well, but what really stinks though is like every few years, here we are again talking the same conversation. Oh, is he going to stay? Last year it was Baker Mayfield. We're talking about this, but it was the same conversation about Baker Mayfield. Last year. This year it's Kevin Stefanski.
And that's why I always argue is like it's regime after regime after regime that we have the same problems with, right? So what does that tell you? There's only one common denominator in that situation, and it's the ownership group, right? The ownership group is the only common denominator in every regime that we have. So something is going on that is not allowing this franchise to be successful, and it's starting at the top, because I just can't fathom that all of these football coaches that have gone on to do great things after they've coached for the Browns sucked here.
Like how,
you know what I mean?
I told Craig, I said, the Giants head coach, how did he stink so bad as our offensive? I mean, I know they're struggling up in New York now. Yeah, but how did Brian DeBoer just like go up to like New York and all of a sudden, like
after having the success he had in Buffalo?
Right. There's just something's not right with this organization sometimes. That's totally off track of what we're trying to talk about. But it's just
that's just the Browns fans coming out on us right there.
Yeah,
that was straight Browns frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Again, something that we haven't really done because this conversation is designed to be uploaded via audio only to the Dawgs By Nature podcast network. But there's a comment here again that I really want to read, and it's by Gary Rader. And if you're watching live, you can see it on the screen. And he says, we all know he needs an offensive coordinator. He needs to focus on the whole coaching aspect. Jim Donovan and TV announcers were baffled by the play calling. This goes back to what we kind of talked about at the beginning of the show, where D. Podesta is dipping his hands into the play calling.
Dude, he's
dipping into the play calling, and he's not allowing Kevin to call the plays. I don't put this on Kevin at all.
There's no analytics in the world. No analytics in the world can factor in negative 10-degree temperatures and negative 20-degree wind chills. There's no analytics in the world You
also can't take play calling away from Kevin Stefanski. That Kevin Stefanski is not going to be like, take my play calling away. I don't care. No, we hired him for his play calling. Kevin Stefanski agreed to take the job so that he could call the plays.
Right.
That's how he got here. He's going to want to call the plays. That's nothing against Alex Van Pelt. But
he just was really bad in the Saints game. It was really bad.
That's his script.
Right. But he's going to take the fall no matter what. Right. Let's be honest. He's going to take the fall no matter what.
He's the quarterback of everything that's off the field.
Right.
If there was ever one game where he should have said, screw the analytics, it was that game. If there was ever a must-win game that everybody in the world knew that the way you win that game was
it almost makes you feel bad for Stefanski, because if he really is getting, pulled at the strings like a puppet by the front office, he can't deviate from it because he's afraid he's going to lose his job, and he can't do things the way he wants to do it. So it's like he's in a rock and a hard place, and he's probably going to be the one to take the fall for it, for the team's shortcomings, and then he'll go on and probably be really good somewhere else.
Looking at some of the other comments, look at the Broncos situation. The new coach reportedly will report to the owner, not the general manager.
Is Elway still a GM out there?
What's that?
Is Elway still a GM out there?
He's not a GM. He's like
I think he stepped away, didn't he? Wasn't he like the
vice president or something like that? I don't know. It's Patton, right? George Patton.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Right.
But it's interesting because Andrew Berry, while he's starting to get some criticism, people are starting to look at his draft history and they're like, are you that good? Like, you might be a salary cap wizard. You can fleece people on trades and manipulate the salary cap, and your free agent signings aren't so bad. But like, can you draft? But he seems to be safer than Stefanski.
Oh, for sure.
Did he draft Garrett? No, he didn't draft
But
Garrett.
Stefanski was part of the crew that hired Barry. Stefanski came before Barry. That's why this situation is so weird.
Excuse me.
Because then what happens? So, like, Stefanski could lose his job before Barry, even though Stefanski helped hire Barry.
But that's not his decision. I mean, if we're being honest, that if he's not running the organization, he didn't hire Barry.
But is it Barry's decision to fire Stefanski?
No, it's the ownership group.
Okay.
Everything goes back to the ownership group. I guarantee you that when Stefanski was hired,
it's
it
just
was
so
highly
convoluted and so non-traditional.
Right. It's non-traditional, and he was highly encouraged to.
Is it up to
hire him.
DePodesta? If DePodesta says, Stefanski's like, he's doing it, like he's kind of doing it, but he's not doing it the right way, get rid of him.
I would say that DePodesta has the most influence out of the group, out of the front office group. But there are still times that Jimmy and D Haslam are going to make decisions how they see fit. He probably has the most input and the most influence, but they're still going to do things their way at certain times. And that typically bites them in the butt.
All right. We are coming to the end of this episode. We didn't really get into previewing the Commanders game. I don't know if it really matters that much. Like, the season's kind of like, show up on game day, watch your team play football, root for them. Don't let them ruin your day. The playoffs are not on the line here.
Yeah.
Just enjoy it. You can enjoy football without the stress right now. The important thing, I think, is that Watson continues to see playing time, and we don't allow any franchise cornerstone players to get career-ending injuries at this point, right?
It's
like,
supposed to be like 60 degrees in Washington, D.C. So
the one thing I am excited about is that connection that Watson's getting with DPJ. They got some chemistry going there.
I think so. I like the connection. I think DPJ has been, when you look at the Browns as a whole, DPJ, to me, he is by far the most improved player on this team this year.
Mr. Consistent. Yeah.
He's proved to be great in contested catch situations. He's developed as a player. You can't really be upset. I still don't think he's like just a bona fide.
No, he's not a Michael Irvin.
No.
Not a Michael Irvin, but like he's not even, to me, like he's a solid wide receiver too, but he's not going to change the world. But it's nice to see him go from a 6th round draft pick to being a solid wide receiver too.
Right. The other thing he struggles with a little bit is that he needs to work on getting separation a little bit more frequently.
You wouldn't have to fight for them contested balls.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, Amari Cooper usually accomplishes his separation with his route running because he's an above average route runner. It could be argued that he's an elite route runner, but DPJ struggles at,
Cooper's elite.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It could be argued that he's elite. Yeah. But DPJ struggles with getting separation on a consistent, manner, which comes with youth and learning in the NFL. But I think that's something that this team really needs to focus on going forward. If they are going to bring anybody into that wide receiver room, it needs to be guys that are good at getting separation, because you notice in games when Amari Cooper struggles to get separation, typically the passing game's not on par, right? Because maybe there's been some games where DPJ has kind of stepped up, but you kind of notice that significant drop off in the passing game when he's not getting separation and getting those chunk plays. So that needs to come with someone who can also stretch the field, because they don't have anybody that can stretch the field. They have guys that can handle the short to intermediate game, but not the long distance game. So, they have a lot of holes. That's just a small snippet of what they need to fix moving forward. But DPJ has definitely been one of the better players and probably more consistent players on the team this year, for sure.
All right. Real quick, before we wrap up the show, do you guys have any picks? Browns are favorites against the Commanders. What do you think is going to happen in this game? And then we'll close out the show here. Right?
That's a tough one for me. Commanders have a pretty decent offense. Their defense is decent. And I think Chase Young is back now, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's back from injury.
Are they playing on New Year's Day?
Say what?
Are they playing on New Year's Day?
It is Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. 1 p.m.
The weather's supposed to be decent in Washington. I'm gonna. God, I just have such a hard time with this, dude. Like, I just.
We're gonna cut your hands off if you're wrong. If that makes it any harder.
I'm gonna say Commanders win.
All right, Barry.
I don't know. You just because you know the Browns, and you just because we have that feeling that the Browns have packed it in now. I mean that's where Ryan's coming from. I know it. I think
I feel like we may see some scratches that are non-injury related.
Some healthy scratches.
Yeah, some healthy scratches, and I think with the holes on defense and things like that, it's just going to be tough sledding for us, until things kind of get back up and running. And I know that feels entirely negative to those listening and to those watching, but I'm trying not to be negative, but it's just really hard for me to put faith in them right now. And it's just, I think the offense is probably going to look decent if the weather's nice. But I still think the defense struggles.
Barry?
Yeah, I gotta echo Ryan's sentiment there. I mean, pretty much took the words out of my mouth.
All right. I am going with Washington as well. We have seemingly packed it in while the season is still on the line. Now that it's not on the line, I wouldn't anticipate that would change. I do agree that we should see some healthy scratches, or at a minimum, some different rotations that will keep some of our cornerstones out of risk of injury for the most part. With the exception of Deshaun Watson, I think that they will have no problem rolling him out there, and I think that that's the right decision.
Jerome Ford? You think we see some Jerome Ford?
Yes, Jerome Ford for sure, absolutely, because this is the offseason where they have to make the Kareem Hunt decision.
Yep,
I
agree.
If they can, if Hunt's willing to come back, they have to decide whether or not they're willing to have him back, or if they want him, how hard they'll fight for him. So, Jerome Ford, lots of Jerome Ford, maybe some Felton, getting a harder look at Felton. And, but Deshaun Watson for sure is going to be the focus. And that's really who we're all going to be watching, right? Because we get these 2 games and then we get the preseason. Other than that, just reckless speculation, just like we did all night tonight.
And honestly, I mean, the Browns have a decision to make at left tackle. They have to figure out which path forward they're going to take with Wills. We didn't
even get into the Conklin discussion. All right, save that for next week. We have all off season to talk about the off season, and that's included.
That's true.
All right, tune in next week. We will. Man, can't believe we didn't get into that. Conklin. We'll talk about Conklin's extension next week. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're
Ryan.
good.
If you've been living under a rock and you're listening or watching, Conklin got a 4-year extension with the Browns. Yeah. So, all right, that is it for this evening. We are the Dawgs Table, a Cleveland Browns roundtable discussion show. We are part of the Dawgs By Nature podcast network, brought to you by SB Nation and Vox Media. Join us Tuesdays at 9 p.m. You can tune in live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and catch the replay on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. That's it for tonight. We'll see you next week.
Happy New Year to you and yours. Enjoy the holiday. Be safe. Don't do anything stupid. Come back next week and listen to us, please.
Happy New Year's. Until then, go Browns.
Go Browns.